welcome to Art Business with Ness. I'm Ness and I'm a professional children's books illustrator. Today we're doing another art critique. I have prepared 2 illustrations that were submitted to me by people in my community on my private Facebook group. If you want to join the Facebook group and propose your own images, you will find the link to that in the description below. We have 2 fabulous illustrations to review today, so let's jump right into it. But first of all, if you're new here and you want to see more videos like this, then make sure to subscribe to this channel and hit the little bell. The bell sends you a notification every time that I upload a new video. This way you're sure that you won't miss any of the advice. Alright, let's go! We are starting today with this gorgeous piece by Betty Szwagierczk. I'm so sorry, Betty. I hope that I said this not too bad. If I did, please correct me in the comments. So this playground set is so fun and very ambitious, which I really love. We can really see that Betty didn't just go the easy option. Instead, she worked really hard to create an illustration that feels full of action, full of life, full of characters. I love the color palette here too. It's very fun. I really love this reddish hue that you put in all of your shadows. It's very cool looking. So let's jump into some things that we could improve in this illustration. I'm going to reduce the opacity of this so we can see a little bit more what I'm going to do here. First of all, the perspective is all in all really well made, but it is a little bit wobbly in a few places. So let's start with identifying where the horizon line and the vanishing points are. So we can see this platform here from the top. So the horizon line will be above that, but below this bar here, which we can see angled towards this way. So I would assume that the horizon line is somewhere around here, and the bars on the side are converging somewhere around here. This one here is converging like this. So I would say that the vanishing point is somewhere around here in the middle for this one. But it's not the only vanishing point in the image, because we can see this pole here is not straight. It's going all the way to the side. So there is another vanishing point in this illustration that's way off the side of this image. And I'm not 100% sure about the choice to include this second vanishing point. I'm not sure that it adds a whole lot to the illustration, and the combination of one vanishing point in the image and another vanishing point outside the image is kind of an extreme perspective trick that can create some confusion and problems in some circumstances. In this illustration in particular, it doesn't cause any specific problems per se, but I'm not sure that it adds much either. All the other lines, like these, little net things, are all perfectly horizontal, and we can't really see the second pole here if it also uses this perspective point. So I'm not sure that this point adds a whole lot to the image, and it just adds sort of a different level of complexity to the perspective, which I'm not sure is necessary. Let's go back here. All right, forgetting about this second perspective point for the moment, what we can see here is there are a few different areas where there is a little bit of confusion about what's going on in the perspective. The first one, and let me turn that up again a little bit so we can see better. The first one is this pole here in the background, this one. I'm not sure actually. It seems that it's in the background when we consider like the floor goes all the way to there, and then this seems to start from here, and the pole seems attached like some sort of rail, but it also seems like it's attached to the structure that the little girl is sitting on, and it seems to be attached as well to where this kid is lying down. So there's this really big confusion here about if it's in the forefront or if it's in the background and what structure it is part of. If it's in the background, then I would have made sure that it's either higher or lower than these platform here on the sides, because it kind of gets confused with these platforms and makes us think it might be part of the same. There's also this blue mushroom thingy here, which I'm not entirely sure where it fits in with the structure. It seems to me that it would be a sort of little ceiling to this platform here that the little girl is standing on, but she is in front of it. So is it a ceiling to this platform? Where does it attaches? It's not entirely clear. The same thing goes for that little like side rail thing here. It starts off red, but then after the pole it changes color, which kind of makes it seem like it might be attached to this pole. Like, is it attached and starting from this pole, or does it come from the back and continues all the way and just happens to change color in the middle here? It's not entirely clear. Things like this really add a little bit of confusion to the readability of the image and makes it really hard to read the structure and to understand what's going on, especially since this is already quite a busy image. So I think here I would have spent a little bit more time on designing this structure and making sure that it's very easy to read so that we can understand at all times what attaches to what, where the characters are touching down, etc. Now let's go back a little bit. Right here. Okay, the next thing I want to talk about are the characters, which in general are very well placed in the image, but some of them are maybe a little bit off in terms of the perspective. So in a perspective drawing, usually how we place character is using the horizontal line, right? So if a character, for instance, has his head like this, and let's just draw something like really quick. If that is the character and the horizontal line goes through his head like this, then if this character is placed further back in the image, the horizontal line will have to go through that character's head exactly at the same place. And that's how we know that the character is well placed within the perspective. If we push it back again, just to make sure that the horizontal line is placed at the exact same height comparatively, and then the character will be well placed within the perspective. Same thing if it were to be even closer to us and not in the back. But in this image, you don't always respect this perspective rule to a T, and we are expected to see a little bit of difference between the characters because they're not all the same height. They're all children of different height. But there is a lot of difference here that is not entirely justified. For instance, this girl here, if we take her as a starting point, okay, she's like this in the image, okay? So if she were to be up front here, she would be still, about the same relation to the horizontal line, so close to it, okay? But the character that you have placed here is way under the horizontal line, way under. In relation, she would actually be really tiny, but she doesn't seem that young, she seems about the same age as this character, maybe a year or two younger, but not small enough to justify that she would be, placed like this in the perspective. Same for the characters here, this one here on the side. So I think in a situation like this, what I would have done is kind of split the difference, right? I would have made this character in the back slightly smaller and this character in the front slightly taller, so that, in comparison to one another, it still won't be an exact match to like the horizontal line, but now it's realistic that these two characters coexist in the same image. Another thing that we could have done is make the horizontal line a lot higher. If it is higher, then it gets closer to a isometric perspective where these sort of differences are less noticeable. But for now here, let's go back. I'm going to turn off these layers because I want to talk to you next about the composition and the readability of this image. So there's very little open space in this image. It's very crammed, very busy, which is the point. You're trying to make this playground seems like a lot is going on. But there are no places for the eye to rest. Like there's a slight open space here, a little bit of open space here, and then the only open space that is the sky, where there's really nothing here on the top. So what happens here is the eye will enter this image, not be sure how to read this image, because kind of lost because there's so many things, there's not a clear path for the eye, and at some point it will kind of go up, up the image and get lost here, get out of the image here because there's nothing framing the image. The eye is so lazy and it's always looking for a break. That's why it's important to create a very specific path for the eye with breaks in between the things so that it doesn't like go out of the image because it's like, too many things to see. So one thing that we could have done here is, for instance, you could have put like some greenery on top, you know, something like up front, like darkened. So not too many details to attract the eye, but just something to like frame up the composition. And then what you want to do is make this slightly less crowded without making it feel like it's less crowded, which is a very, very difficult balance. You have many characters here. I think maybe I would remove one character to make sure that it breathes a little bit more, but there are also a lot of props that maybe are not necessary. This bag here, for example, in the background, it's like way back in the background, but it's quite detailed compared to like this bush, right? That's like completely undetailed. So either you make this like undetailed or, you know, completely remove it so that it clears up the silhouettes of the other characters a bit more. See, I think this reads a little bit more already, and truthfully, it wasn't exactly a necessary detail. As well as the bag here, I think that's a very, interesting detail that there's a bag hanging out there. It's very cute, but it kind of gets stuck in all of the lines here. It's already difficult to read what's going on there. This shirt as well, quite detailed compared to, you know, where it's supposed to be in the image. So let's see what happens if we remove both of those. Alright, so I think it already reads a little bit better, and it doesn't really take much out from the illustration itself. There's still so many things going on, and I'd rather remove these things than remove any of the characters. Let's add these back, and then the little thing here, since I'm not certain like how it attaches to the structure and it kind of creates confusion for me, maybe I would just remove it and see if that helps give a little break here. Alright, so here we have, for the moment, looking like this. I think it helps a little bit and it doesn't really remove anything all that important. Now here's another thing that we could do that could help in this situation. One of these characters up front could be brought up very, very close to the camera and darkened quite a bit to simulate that they're very, very close to the camera, and it would still hint that there's a person there, so it would still give the hint of a crowd and the feeling that there's a lot of kids in this illustration, but it would be a much less detailed area of the illustration that would kind of frame the composition. Let's give this a try. Okay, so here's for example what it could be, and then of course you could like move this character a little bit so that it fits better. Let's see what we can do with that. Alright, so this is an example of what it could be. Of course, it's not something that you have to do, it's just a suggestion. By changing, you know, where the characters are in the image, some are extreme close-ups, are in the background, it still keeps this idea of a teeming, crowded playground, but still kind of gives some breaks to the eye in the illustration. So I think this helps quite a bit. So there it is. All in all, this image was a big challenge and Betty did very, very well. It's such a difficult thing to intentionally create a feeling of a scene being so busy and crowded, and at the same time keeping it like clear and readable. It's opposites, right? So it's very difficult. It's a very thin line to walk, and I think Betty did a really, really good job. So congratulations. The second image that we're going to critique today is this adorable and wonderful illustration by Aleks, Stypulkowska. How sweet is this? Oh, I'm so in love with your style, Aleks. The combination of very flat shapes and the strict, like very dark shadows create this look like it's made out of construction paper, like a collage. It's so interesting. I really, really love it. It's a very charming style, and this scene is really, really sweet and enchanting. So great job, Aleks. Now, some things that we could improve, immediately what I see is that there's a lack of contrast in this image. So if we turn this to black and white so you can see a bit, there is a little bit of contrast. There is a bit here in the bushes that are quite dark, and this is a little bit lighter, but in general it's very same-ish, you know. And especially with the dragon and the character, they are supposed to be, you know, the main focal point of the image, but they don't have the most amount of contrast in the image, and there's not enough of a focal point on them using the lighting and tones in the image. Let's see what happens if we had some contrast to this image. Okay, this makes it darker. We could also like boost the brightness a little bit. So this already helps quite a bit, don't you think? Something else that we could do, and this is totally a personal choice, but this is an idea that I had while looking at it. The sky is quite this middle gray, okay? Even with the contrast, it's like a 50% gray thereabouts. And it's quite rare that we have this in real life. You know, the night sky will be very, very dark, like almost black. And during the day, the sky is very light. So during the day, things stand in contrast with the sky because they are darker than the sky. And during the night, they are lighter than the sky, which is very dark. Here, you have this situation where you have some elements that are darker, some elements that are lighter, and it's a difficult balance to strike. So I'm wondering, what if we darkened this sky and tried to put all the other elements in contrast to it by having them be lighter? Alright, so it's not exact, but it's maybe approximately how that would be. I think it also helps quite a bit because in the background, you know, there's no details. And this used to look maybe a little bit odd. Like, why is there forest here but no forest in the background? When the sky is darkened, it doesn't seem to be quite as big of a problem anymore. So let's see if we can adjust this, make it a little bit lighter. See, what do you think about this? I think that now all the elements stand in very clear contrast because we have darkened the sky. Now, one thing that used to bother me before is that your fire seemed to be quite low in light. It barely illuminates the surroundings and barely illuminates this dragon, where it's supposed to be, you know, pitch darkness. In pitch darkness, the fire would illuminate all of the scene. But when we darken this, then these elements seem so brightly lit in comparison, and it seems like it's the fire that's doing it. If we check the contrast now, I think it's much clearer where the areas of interest are. All in all, you have such a wonderful illustration here, Alex. I love it so much. And all of my feedback here, as you can see, is aimed at bringing out what's already there because the magic is already present in the image. I so very much look forward to see what you do next, Alex. And this is it for today's art critique. Thank you so much for Betty and Alex for submitting their images to this art critique series. If you're interested in submitting an image on your own, then please go to our Freelance Illustrators Cafe, which is our Facebook group, to submit an illustration as well. I do have quite a big backlog of illustrations. You guys have submitted so many. I will try to go through all of them, but I cannot promise that I will be able to. But in the meantime, that's it for me today. I hope that you enjoyed the video and that you found the critique helpful. And if you did, then don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to help our small channel grow. Thank you so much for being here today, and I will see you in next video. Bye bye!